Yeah, we have red lighting.
I'll make sure he's had it there.
Thank you, Mr. Peters, for coming. And
You're
as you know,
welcome.
we're doing a historical veterans project for Waynesville and for a genealogy room. And if you'd like, would you please tell us when you were in the service, what branch you served in?
Well, April 13th, 1942, I enlisted at Patterson Field. From there started a voyage of 26 different bases in 4 years. So I moved around.
You did.
From Patterson, we went to Springfield, Illinois to form 42nd Air Depot Group. And we went there. From there, we went to Miami, Florida, went through Embry-Riddle School of Aviation there, went to Brooklyn Field, Mobile, which was, I was there from September to latter part of March, which was my longest stay at any place. And from there on, while I was there, I went up through the ranks to Master Sergeant, and I enlisted, took the test to become a pilot, and started through the course of that, and graduated from flying school in February of 43, or 44. February 44. From there, went through training overseas and was assigned to the 92nd Bomb Group, which was a B-17 group, and flew combat missions over Germany. On my 6th mission, I was shot down the first time, and we landed at Chateau Tournai, where the First World War was fought, just north of Paris. And that was a rather interesting landing. The Germans was on one side of the river, and the Americans was on the other side. And the plane was disabled pretty badly, so we did a wheels-up landing down through a grassy strip beside the runway. And there were combat engineers there, and they all started diving in bomb craters. The Germans had just left the air base, it was still burning. And they kept, when the plane finally stopped, they jumped up and yelled, "Don't get out, stay where you're at." We started looking around, and the ground was covered with live bombs, and we came right down through the center of them, and if we'd have hit one, well, that would have been the end of us.
Oh my goodness.
So we were in Paris 6 days just after it was liberated. So you had to, when the sun went down, you went inside because the Germans were still there, and the Free French was rooting them out, so you could get killed on the streets at night. So we got back to England, and Eisenhower's personal plane, which is up the Air Force Museum, I could have flown that from Paris to London. Went back, started flying missions, and got shut down again. September the 27th. About 44. From there, I was in prison camp just about 9 months.
So you were captured?
Captured.
Captured on the spot
On
of
the spot,
being
yes.
shot down.
Yes, we just ran out of engines.
Was the whole crew captured? So you all
Yes.
survived the crash?
But the other pilot, he died. He had his leg shot out the side of his head. He died. This is right here. But the rest, they bailed out, most of them. I landed the plane, and we were captured and spent the rest of the war in prison camp.
Which prison camp were you in?
Stalag Luft 1. It was up in Barth, Germany. We had 8,000, well, over 8,000 American Air Force officers there. No enlisted men, all officers. And we had all the aces of the 8th Air Force, the fighter aces and all that. They were all there. And we were liberated by the Russians. And that was kind of scary. They weren't my favorite people.
You're talking about the Russians?
Yes, the Russians. almost insist that we go back through Russia. And if we got on the train and started, we would have never come out. That's a well-known fact. But fortunately, of course, the 8th Air Force knew we were there. So they sent General Gavin, which was the head of the 82nd Airborne, in to meet with the Russian General, Zhukov. And he told Zhukov, he says, let him go or we'll come and get him. If you want a war, you got him. So they said, okay, they can go. So they took B-17s, took all the turrets out, and a classmate of mine flew me out that I graduated with.
From here in Wayne?
No, I went through
the
class
airport.
44B,
Okay.
flight school, and they put 55 of us in the B-17.
That's a lot of people in a
Yeah.
B-17.
That's right, but they had taken the bomb base out and the turrets. No one objected, believe me.
Yeah.
We were glad to get away from there.
Mhm.
And we flew back into France. And a strange thing happened. They flew us into an airfield at Reims. We got on a train and we started to Camp Lucky Strike. It was a processing center. And we pulled into marshalling yards. We were sitting there. Another train pulled up and stopped. I looked over and there said Bob Plank. He was coming out of Lucky Strike while we were going in. He was in Stalin 3, and they were processed before us, so he was on his way.
What was it like to be,
What was it like?
to be in their prison?
Well,
And some of us have visions of Hogan's Heroes, and that's not how it was.
no, believe me, Hogan's Heroes. We had none of those. There was, up until Christmas, we had a little food, a little American Red Cross parcels, which was, you could survive on one meal a day. But after that, they didn't bring us any more food. So if there was a strafing mission, of course the Germans used a lot of horses. Horses would be killed and they'd drag them in there and put them in a pot. You could smell them before you saw them. And they put them in as pressure cookers and cook them about 24 hours. And that's what you got. And you got 2 slices of bread a day. The bread was made from potatoes and barley. There was no wheat flour. It weighed 7 pounds per ounce, per loaf. And it had to age 7 days. It was like glue inside. It had to dry out. And it was rolled in sawdust. And when they bring it in a wagon and take a scoop shovel and scoop it off on the ground. And it bounced like a rubber ball when it hit the ground. Hey, that's good. Hey, don't think that you can't eat anything. When you get hungry enough, you will. And we went from, we got our last meal Christmas. And we went to the war's end before we got any more food. I weighed 98 pounds.
Well, was it that Christmas of 44?
Yes, we got out. Or no, yeah.
And you didn't get out till August? of
No,
40?
we got out in May.
No?
May of 45, when we were liberated.
Being officers, aviator officers there, I'm assuming they did some interrogation?
Oh, we went through a lot of interrogation. We were captured. Every officer, Air Force officer, went to Frankfurt. Well, in fact, everyone went there. You went in solitary confinement the moment you got there. You went into a 4-by-8 room with a bed. That's it. And every 4 hours they'd come and get you, and they'd take you into another building. One time you'd be interrogated by civilian. Next time it'd be military, and that went on and on and on around the clock for 4 days. And that paper I showed you there, I went in and this officer laughed you know, go in, you give your name, rank, and serial number, and you sat there and listened to him talk. And he laughed. He said, "You really can't tell me anything. We know where you're from. You're playing, and of course we've been through that. We know who you are." And he started telling me about who my father was, what schools I'd been through, and everything. And I looked at him, my mouth flew up. He says, "It's easy." He said, "You Americans, everything you do, you put in the paper. All we do is read the paper. Read your newspapers. We have people all over the country that radio it back." No, that far north, in the winter, your days consist of 4 hours of daylight. We was far north as Green.
Ooh, I didn't realize that.
Yes. And in the summertime, it never really gets dark. It gets dusk.
So I'm assuming you sat a lot in the dark.
Well, you laid in your bed because there wasn't room for everybody
Yeah.
out. There were 16 of us in this little room. I was in the third bunk up, being there last. I was the young one in the room, and I couldn't set up in bed. I was only about 2.5 foot from the ceiling. My bed consists of 3 boards, about foot wide, one for your head, one for your hips, and one for your feet. There's nothing in between. And your mattress was filled with wood chips, and you had 2 blankets. And that was it.
I imagine it's sub-zero.
Oh, yes, it was. And each room had what they call a dog run. It's for these guard dogs that could come under and sniff around, see if nobody's hiding under the floor. So the wind would blow under there, and it was cold. We didn't have
Did they
any.
provide any heat at all?
Oh, no.
No stove? No.
We had a stove in the corner of the room, but they only gave you, their coal was all processed. They took, they got most of their fuel, gasoline and stuff out of coal. And what was left was dust, and it would burn for about 10 minutes. And then when it was through, it was nothing but just white dust. Everything had been refined out of it, synthetic oil and so forth. And they turned the water on maybe 15 minutes a day. You got 1 shower a month. Oh well,
You survived.
I survived.
For the video camera, would you tell us about your
Oh,
lucky
this-
charm there?
Oh, this hat, that hat was my good luck charm. I mean, everybody had something, and I always hung it behind me. And when I shot down, I put it on board. It was the only one that I know of being installed with one. And it was worn by a reporter that interviewed Heinrich Himmler towards the end of the war, trying to cut a deal to get himself and his family out, but it didn't work. This is a picture of the crew. And as far as my medals, I can give you a list. I recently, about 2 years ago, I wrote, there's a branch of the Air Force in Randolph Field, Texas, that takes care of this. And one day a truck pulled up, and I had to sign 4 or 5 sheets, and I got all my medals.
Oh,
I got Purple Heart, Air Medal, things, Prisoner of War Medal, those type of things. I think I have 7 medals altogether. I finally made a shadow box and put them all in it. My kids said they wanted me to.
Well, you
Yeah.
successfully, I mean, you brought that plane down safely, even though it had been
Yes.
shot, so you
Yeah.
would have been awarded a medal for that, right?
That
Well,
was phenomenal.
if I'd have got back, I'm sure the Air Force would have been generous. But number 3 and 4 engines was shot out on the bomb run to the target, and we started back alone, and the navigator made a 15-second error when he gave us a heading, and we flew right over the top of Koblenz,
Oh,
and they nailed us.
yeah.
So, number one engine was on fire when the guys bailed out. And number two, all the controls were shot away from it. I had no control. The only thing I could do is turn it off
Oh,
on the switch.
yeah.
So I made a landing and dug up a potato field.
How old were you when this happened?
Let's see, I went in at 24, I was 26.
Oh, well, you were mature. You know, some
Oh,
of the
yeah,
men
that's
that we
good.
talked to were like, 17, 18 years
No.
old, and I was going to ask that when you're that young, how this
No,
affected you.
24 is pretty young.
Well, it's young, don't get me wrong, but you had some maturity at that time.
Well,
So
yes.
you were aware of what was happening to you.
Well, yes, I've been shot down once before.
Sometimes I think when 17-year-olds go through traumas like this, because they're so young, it doesn't affect them the same way.
Right. I met a man in prison camp, Ward Lewis. We would go to, XPOWs have a convention every year, and we used to go, and he was a very dear friend, and he recently passed away. He died of cancer. He lived in San Diego. So I miss him.
Sure.
But my engineer and ball turret gunner, last September the convention was in Louisville.
Oh,
So next year it's in Tucson.
Tucson, you ready to go?
Yeah.
No?
Are the guys that bailed out, were they captured or did someone-
Immediately.
Were they? Thought maybe one of them might have got lucky.
No. See, what made it rough, most of our missions were flown over top. By that I mean there was maybe 10,000 foot of clouds underneath us you didn't see. We had a very rude form of radar that we used. And Kassel was the town we were supposed to bomb. It's set in the bend of a river like that.
Castle, Germany.
Kassel, Germany. It's set on the Rhine River, and the radar would differentiate between land and water. And that, but we got hit on the bomber, lost 2 engines. And
So did you, were you married when you went in the
No,
service?
no.
And you didn't continue to have a military career? did you?
I was separated at Patterson Field, or Wright Field, in 45. But the stipulation was that I had to re-enlist within 30 days in the reserve, which I did. And they assigned me to Clinton County Air Force Base, which is airborne over Wilmington now, but it was an Air Force base. So I went to one meeting, and my wife was sick, so I didn't go to the second. If I'd have made the second meeting, I would have flown the Berlin airlift. So I just missed that.
Wow.
And I wasn't active. I was in the reserve for about altogether 6, 7 years. But, after they saw I wasn't interested, they finally let me go.
Did you have brothers that were also in the service? Siblings?
Yeah, I had a brother later on. It was in the Korean. He was in that.
Mhm.
I have a son that's soon be retiring from the
Oh,
Air
really?
Force.
Oh, my.
Tom,
Oh, okay.
oldest son. My granddaughter, Jennifer, and her husband leave Sunday to come back. He's Air Force. He's an instructor pilot in F-16s. And he is getting out of the regular Air Force, and he's enlisted in the Air National Guard. He's going to fly out of Springfield. So he's got a good job.
Just kind of in closing, if you could tell one positive thing that came out of your military experience, what would it be?
My wife.
Your wife? Did you meet?
I met my wife on a blind date.
Go on, tell us the story.
You want to hear this story?
Yes, we do.
I have a very good friend, Robert Clary, and he he lived at my house about 9 months before he enlisted in the Marines. He wanted Marines, so I wanted no part of that. So he got married, and when the war was over and I came back from Germany, he wanted me to come down to Cincinnati. And he and his wife were there with her aunt, and he said, well, get you a blind date. Well, I was never one too much for blind dates, so that's how I met my wife. We went to Coney Island that night, and on the island, all that old stuff. And we've been together every day since.
That's
Oh,
wonderful.
wonderful.
45, that makes us married quite a while, 50-some years. We've got, we have 2 sons. We have 5 great-grandkids and 5 great-great-grandkids.
That's
Wow,
wonderful.
that's wonderful.
So we've had a good life.
Yes, you have.
If there's one good thing came out of my service, it was the fact I met my wife.
Oh, how
That's
wonderful.
beautiful.
And if you had to say the negative, what would it
The negative
be?
thing? Well, since I enlisted, you can't be too negative. I took what I was given and went on. Being shot down was negative.
Yeah, that would do it for you.
Being in prison camp for 9 months is negative.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, I would do it again.
Well, that's good. That's beautiful.
And I'd just like to ask you for any closing remarks for history's sake, for the next generation, anything you'd like to say in closing.
Well, you never know what's going to happen to you. I graduated in '39 from Waynesville, got a job, went to work, and the war came along, which I had no part in. I didn't start it, but I was in it. So be prepared. You never stop learning. Never give up.
Wyatt.
Their day